After our latest video that we did on the QQQ ETF, a few of you asked, well, yeah, that's great about QQQ, but what about QQQM? Well, in today's video, we're going to do a comparison between QQQ and QQQM and reveal the true differences between both of these funds and which one might be a better option. Now, in this video, here is what we're going to review today, part of this Versus series on QQQ and QQQM. And I'm going to get very tired of saying QQQ so many times in this video. Now, both of these funds are very similar. They're both ran by Invesco. That's the investment management company that created both of these funds. Now, QQQ was originally created back in 2002. Ranks up there in the top 5 ETFs overall. QQQM is a relative newcomer made in October of 2020. Now, I've been invested in QQQ for a while because QQQ tracks the NASDAQ 100 index. Top 100 non-financial companies listed on the NASDAQ index. Now, what's really cool about the NASDAQ is you get a good exposure of all these different tech companies without putting all of your eggs into one basket. So for example, you're not putting all your money onto Tesla, but you do own a piece of Tesla as a result of owning QQQ, or in this case also QQQM. So this gives you exposure to that top 100 companies in the NASDAQ index. And I've been investing in this for quite a few years. And in fact, right now, my Webull portfolio, I am up to a small amount, but I think it's like 15 shares. I also have some in my retirement accounts as well. But rest assured, for those people that were commenting on my previous video, yes, I do also have some QQQM. Let's start with the basics, courtesy here of Seeking Alpha. You can see QQQ going for $2.80 as of the recording of this video. Here we are in 2022, and we've had quite a year, down 20% in the last year. And that, of course, is keeping up with the stock market, which is also down anywhere from 20 to 22%. So that's QQQ's price. Now QQQM is 115.23. So a little bit of a difference. And that's one of the first differences right off the bat is the cost. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about the cost. The cost really is relative to the fact that Invesco wanted to put out another product for two different reasons. The very first reason is, of course, this is a lesser price. So for those retail investors, it's an easier pill to swallow. So you can get into this one for only 115, or even if you look at the 52-week range over here, the total there was $167.91. That was the top in the last year alone. So even still a lot better, $167 versus QQQ, where you had to pay $280 to get in right now, or in the last year, look at this difference, $408. So obviously a lot of people come into this are like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to invest in something like this, but $400 is a lot of money, let alone the fact of $280. So that was the first reason that they created QQQM, lower barrier to entry. The second part is to lower the expense ratio. Now you have the Vanguard funds, and everybody likes to talk about them because you have expense ratios of next to nothing. We're talking about like 0.04%, 0.02%, literally almost nothing. Now right here on QQQ, you can see the expense ratio is 0.20%, a little bit more expensive than most other general index tracking ETFs. And that 0.20 means for every $10,000 that you have invested, you'll pay about $20 in expenses. And remember, that's pulled out of your asset value, calculated all within your portfolio. So you never really actually see the bill, but know that it's getting taken out. But $20 for every $10,000 invested. If you come over here to QQQM, look at this, it's a little bit cheaper. Here we are at a 0.15% right over here, 0.15%. So it's 0.05% cheaper than QQQ. So you're saving what, $5 for every 10,000 invested, give or take. So it's not a huge win, but that also helps. So those are the two reasons. You have the expense ratio, a little bit less, and you have a cheaper barrier to entry price. Let's talk really quick about the dividend rate though. So if I come back here, by the way, I'm using Seeking Alpha for all of this. Absolutely love Seeking Alpha. You can get their premium account with 50% off right now using the link down in the description below. But look at this. So here we are on QQQM, dividend yield of 0.68%. So that's an annual payout of 79 cents. Now remember, these tech companies, the NASDAQ 100 index is not a huge dividend payer. So it's not going to be like a 1%, 2% or more dividend rate. You're going to have a lower dividend rate typically on these type of funds, but it is nice that they still do pay a dividend. So there we are, last announced dividend 25 cents that was paid out on 9/23. That's QQQM. Hop over here to QQQ, come up here to dividends. Let's scroll down and over. And then you're going to see it's a little bit more of a dividend yield by only 0.02%. 0.7% annual payout of $1.97. And then their last payout is actually coming up on 10/31 in the amount of 52 cents per share that you own. So it's kind of similar in that case. And that brings us to the holdings. Now, this is where you're going to say, well, these funds are basically the same thing. And I would say you're kind of right. So if I come over here, we're going to actually compare these apples to apples right next to each other. So you have the holdings breakdown. So in the holdings breakdown, I'm going to put these next to each other so we can kind of see the differences. On the left-hand side, we have QQQ. Right-hand side is QQQM. So technology at 47.75 versus 47.72. Basically no difference at all. Consumer cyclical, 16.43, 16.41. You can see communication is the exact same. And then consumer defensive, 6.48, 6.47. You can see here the top 10 holdings. Now, for the top 10 holdings, let me zoom in on this one a little bit. We have Apple over here on QQQ at 13.56. Over on QQQM, 13.56. 10.42 for Microsoft, same thing there. Amazon, 6.87. Everything's pretty much the same, except for we come down here to PepsiCo. Okay, we're talking 2.11% versus 2.10%. Total holdings in QQQ at 102 versus 104. It's basically the same fund. And remember what I said earlier, the goal here was lower cost and lower expense ratio. And as you can see from the holdings, they're still pretty much the same. So again, not putting all your eggs into one basket. Either one of these funds will give you exposure to some of the greatest technology companies out there and some other ones on top. So you got Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, but then you also get exposure to PepsiCo and Costco and Meta. And I think Home Depot is somewhere in here too. But this is really good because you get that exposure without putting all your eggs into one basket, meaning one single stock. So let's move on to the assets under management. And this is where these two differ a little bit. If you come up here to the summary of QQQ, and we're going to do the same thing over here with QQQM. Now, if you look over here on the right-hand side of Seeking Alpha, you'll see it says AUM. That means assets under management. Right there, you can see, maybe, there you go. That's a little bit better, right? All right, there you can see it's 164 billion in the case of QQQ, but look at QQQM. Scrolling here, 4.91 billion. Now, there's a big difference here because when this fund first launched, I think it was right around 200 million assets under management. So that's actually a positive sign that there are investors pouring into this new fund. The fact that it went from that 200 million mark to now 4.91 billion assets under management. So this fund is indeed growing. So you got 4.91 and 1.64 billion. Obviously, QQQ is going to be heavier because it's been around longer. There's a lot more volume. Look at the difference in the volume here, 311 versus 30.1 million. Now, that's a big difference as well. And this is the crucial thing to think about. QQQ is going to be more liquid. So you're going to see a little bit more variance in the price. It's going to go up and down a lot more. QQQM is not. It's going to be a little bit more stable because there's not as much volume. We call that liquidity. There's not a lot of liquidity in the market in QQQM. So you're not going to see the mood swings that you might see with QQQ. And that's something to keep in mind. Now, most of us are long-term holders. We're not looking to buy into QQQ and maybe sell it next year, or in 6 months, or even maybe in 5 years. We're looking at the long term. We're going to buy into this and hold it for like 10 years, in which case QQQM may be a better option because you're not having to worry about getting in and getting out and making sure it's liquid. You can just kind of hold on and let the thing grow over time. And when we get to the portfolio visualizer, I think you're going to be really interested to see the difference between both of these. So knowing that QQQM came out in October of 2020, what we're going to do is we're going to stack them both together. We're going to say that we invested $10,000 into both and not a penny more. Where would we be at today, and how are they tracking next to each other? Because they're practically the same fund under the same exact investment management company. So right here on our portfolio visualizer, we're going to do 2020. In fact, I'm going to select month by month, and then we're going to go right into 2020 October. So this is exactly when this QQQM fund launched. We're going to keep it until December of 2022 just to keep it rolling. There's our $10,000. We are going to reinvest the dividends, and right down here are the assets. So QQQ is our very first fund portfolio at 100%. And then our second portfolio will be QQQM. And that one will also be under the second portfolio. So let's analyze and see where we come up with. So as you can see, there's actually supposed to be two different lines, a blue and a red line on this graph. As you can see, they follow so close together, it's almost hilarious. But look at the difference here. There's a little bit of a difference. And again, it's marginal difference. We're literally fussing about pennies in a sense. But if you look here in 2020, the main QQQ gave back a total of 16.68% versus 16.47%. Then we move on to 2021, And now look, 27.42 versus 27.45. And a lot of investors, a lot of people talking back in 2021 said, well, look at that. QQQM outperformed. That's evident by the red bar, by the way. The blue bar is QQQ. So if you look at the red bar and you're like, whoa, wait a second. I got a little bit more return on my money. It's not that much. I mean, we're talking 0.42 versus 0.45. I mean, come on. But still, a little bit more of a return. Let's look at the downside, because remember, 2022 is an absolute crap. Here we are, we're down on both, but look at the difference. The main QQQ is actually down more at 32.49% versus QQQM at 32.42%. It didn't fall as far, but again, we're arguing pennies. Literally 0.0 something percent. That's not a whole lot. So in a world where we have low expense ratios, it kind of makes sense why Invesco would want to make this very good strategy move to appeal to some investors that are looking for lower expense ratios and a lower barrier to entry. So I think for any long-term holders, QQQM may be something to do a little bit more research on. But remember, this is not direct financial advice to you. I'm just some guy on YouTube who sometimes looks like Woody from Toy Story, according to some of the comments. So take that for what it's worth. But if you want to learn more about QQQ specifically, check out this video next. We'll see you on the next video.